Imagine, just for a moment, waking up to a world that no longer pulls you into its chaos. The honking cars, the passive-aggressive emails, the judgmental stares, the political noise, the endless scroll of someone else's curated perfection, it is all still there. But it does not move you. It does not own you. You walk through it, not with detachment, but with a grounded presence so deep that people around you begin to wonder if you know something they do not. Most people do not live like this. They do not wake up with peace. They wake up in reaction. They carry the residue of yesterday's arguments. They anticipate today's disappointments, and they wear their stress like armor. One careless comment can wreck their morning. One passive insult can hijack their whole day. That is not because the world is that powerful. It is because no one ever taught them how to reclaim their emotional power. So today, that is where we begin. Inner peace is not a reward for a perfect life. It is a skill. It is a discipline. It is a choice. And like any skill, it must be practiced with intention. Let me tell you about a man named James. He was successful by every external metric. A respected lawyer, a nice house in the suburbs, 2 beautiful kids, but inside, he was at war with himself. Every little disruption threw him off. A delayed flight, a missed call, a critical email. He would spiral. Rage simmered just under the surface. His kids learned to tiptoe around his moods. His wife stopped sharing her real thoughts, afraid it would trigger another explosion. James did not need a new car. He needed new wiring. One day, while waiting in a long line at the DMV, he overheard an elderly man say something that changed everything. The man turned to his granddaughter and said, "Sweetheart, we do not control what happens, but we sure as hell decide how we meet it." Those words haunted James. That night he sat in silence and wrote down a question that would become his anchor. What if I stop letting everything outside dictate everything inside? And that is where it starts. You begin by recognizing just how much control you have given away to the traffic, to the headlines, to people who do not even know your name. You reclaim your power by asking yourself, is this worth my peace? There is a truth that is both terrifying and liberating. Most of your suffering does not come from the thing itself. It comes from your reaction to it. The traffic jam is not the suffering. The internal outrage, the mental argument, the tightness in your chest, that is the suffering. And the key to ending it is not in controlling the world. It is in controlling your interpretation of it. You see, most of us were never taught emotional self-regulation. We were told to be tough, to suppress, to push through. Or worse, we were told to just smile and pretend. But the truth is, strength is not suppression. Strength is spaciousness, the ability to pause between stimulus and response, and in that pause, to choose peace over performance. Let me ask you a question. Have you ever let one small comment ruin your entire day? Of course you have. So have I. But why? Why do we allow a momentary judgment from someone else to become our emotional climate? Because we confuse feeling with identity. Someone says something unkind, and instead of noticing it, we absorb it. We believe it. And when we believe it, it becomes a lens we carry into every moment that follows. But imagine this. Imagine hearing the insult and letting it pass through you like wind through a tree. Imagine seeing the drama, and instead of being pulled in, you take a breath, smile softly, and keep your dignity intact. That is not weakness. That is mastery. This does not mean becoming numb. It means becoming discerning, choosing what deserves access to your nervous system, your breath, your energy. It means practicing emotional boundaries the same way you would lock your front door, not out of fear, but out of wisdom. Think of your emotional world like a garden. If you do not protect it, weeds will grow. Resentment, envy, self-doubt, comparison. They do not need much water. They grow wild in neglect. But when you protect it, when you tend to it with presence and compassion, beauty blooms. Many people confuse peace with passivity. They think if you are peaceful, you must be naive or detached from reality. But that is a misunderstanding. Real peace is not a lack of feeling. It is the strength to feel fully, without drowning. It is the courage to stand in the storm and still choose your response. So how do we practice this? Start small. The next time you are triggered, do not react. Observe. Feel the heat rise, but stay with it. Breathe into it. Ask yourself, is this worth the cost of my peace? You will be amazed at how many battles you can walk away from without ever swinging a sword. Another practice. Name your emotions without judgment. I am feeling anxious. I am feeling hurt. I am feeling unseen. Naming disarms the emotion. It stops being a monster in the dark and becomes something you can hold with care. Finally, create rituals of return. When life pulls you away, have anchors that bring you back. A breath, a walk, a phrase. For me, I return to a single sentence. This moment is enough. And it always is. Peace does not mean nothing happens. It means nothing owns you. And when you learn to reclaim your emotional power, you no longer need the world to be calm for you to be calm. You carry the calm within you. That is the first pillar. That is where the journey begins. But peace alone is not enough. Peace is the ground, but connection is the air. Because even the calmest soul needs to be seen, to be loved, to be met. So let us walk toward the second truth together. Let us explore how connection, real connection, becomes the medicine that heals both the mind and the body. In a world more connected than ever, people are lonelier than ever. We share photos, opinions, and emojis by the hour. But when the screen goes dark, many are left sitting in a quiet room, feeling more invisible than they have ever been. The irony is heavy. The tools meant to bridge us often become walls. The noise meant to unite us often drowns out the very voices that matter. But here is the truth. Human beings are wired to connect. It is not a luxury. It is not a bonus after success. It is the foundation of our well-being. The Harvard study of adult development, the longest-running research on human happiness, confirmed what the heart has always known. The number one predictor of health, longevity, and life satisfaction is not wealth, not fame, not cholesterol levels. It is the quality of your relationships. Let that sink in. What determines whether you grow old with joy or with regret is not how much you have in the bank, but how deeply you are loved, how often you laugh with someone who sees you, how safe you feel when you fall apart, how warm your kitchen feels on a Sunday morning. You do not need 1,000 friends. You need 1 or 2 souls who will pick up the phone at 2 a.m. when you cannot breathe through the anxiety. You need someone who sees your shadow and still chooses you, someone who reminds you of your worth when your mind forgets. And perhaps even more important, you need to be that person for someone else. But we must start with this uncomfortable truth. Many people do not feel truly seen. They live among others, but their hearts are in exile. They post. They perform. They nod politely in conversations, but their deeper selves stay hidden, afraid of judgment, afraid of rejection. This, my friend, is not connection. This is coexistence. So how do we find our way back? How do we build bridges in a culture that often celebrates the individual more than the community? We begin by redefining what connection means. Connection is not just sharing a meal. It is sharing a silence where nothing needs to be said, but everything is understood. It is not just knowing someone's favorite song. It is knowing the wound that shaped their silence and the dream that keeps them awake at night. Let me tell you about a woman named Angela. She was a nurse during the height of the pandemic. Every day she held the hands of strangers taking their last breaths. She comforted families through screens. But she herself felt profoundly alone. After work, she would come home to an empty apartment. No one to hold her. No one to ask how she was really doing. She tried therapy. It helped. But what healed her most was something unexpectedly simple. She began texting one old friend every morning. Just a small message. Thinking of you today. You are loved. Little by little, something began to shift. That friend responded, then others. Within weeks, her inbox became a soft landing place. Her evenings were no longer filled with silence, but with slow, kind conversations. You see, connection is not built through grand gestures. It is built through daily drops of presence. A question asked with sincerity, a smile to a stranger, a hand on the shoulder when words fall short. If peace is a skill, connection is a practice. And like any practice, it requires effort. But the rewards are priceless. One of the most common myths is this: we must be perfectly healed before we can connect deeply. That is false. You do not have to be fully whole to be deeply loved. You just have to be willing to be seen and to see others without rushing to fix them. In fact, our wounds often become the very places we bond, not because we trauma share, but because vulnerability breeds truth. Think of the most powerful conversations you have had. They likely did not revolve around promotions or vacations. They were born in the moments when someone said, "I am not okay," and you replied, "Me too." And in that quiet "me too," something ancient inside both of you exhaled. So, how do we nurture this kind of connection? First, we listen to understand, not to reply. True connection is not built by waiting your turn to speak. It is built by entering the world of the other person, leaving behind your own need to be right, and offering the gift of full attention. Second, we ask deeper questions. Not just how was your day, but what was something today that made you feel alive? Not just, what are you up to? But is there anything weighing on your heart that you have not said out loud? Third, we create rituals of presence. A Sunday dinner, a morning walk, a handwritten note. These small, repeated acts form the glue of relationships. They say, "I see you. I choose you. You matter to me, not out of obligation, but from the softness of intention." And here is something most people forget. You do not have to wait to be invited in. You can be the inviter. You can be the one who opens the door. You can choose to go first, to reach out, to initiate warmth. Not everyone will respond. That is okay. But you will never regret loving too much. You will only regret holding back when it mattered most. Of course, connection does not mean keeping toxic people in your life. It does not mean staying in spaces where you are constantly drained, disrespected, or dismissed. Sometimes, the most loving act is a goodbye. But even then, you can leave with grace. You can wish someone well from a distance, while still protecting your peace. The goal is not quantity. It is depth. You can have thousands of followers and still feel empty. Or you can have 3 people who really get you and feel rich beyond measure. Because in the end, a fulfilled life is not measured by milestones, but by moments. The laugh that makes you forget time. The hand that steadies you when your knees buckle. The eyes that say, "I know your soul and I am not going anywhere." That is connection. That is medicine. And when you pair that with inner peace, you become unstoppable. You are no longer chasing meaning. You are creating it, day by day, breath by breath, heart to heart. Now that we have laid the foundation of peace and connection, we will explore the habits that sustain them, the small daily choices that either deepen your roots or pull you further from yourself. Get ready, because the next step is not just knowing, it is practicing. And practice, done with love, becomes transformation. There is a moment in every conflict, every insult, every uncomfortable silence, where we stand at a crossroads. One path is reaction, the other is choice. Most people, without realizing it, choose the first. They hear a rude comment, and they flare up. They see a critical glance, and they shrink. They feel ignored, and they retaliate. And in doing so, they hand over the keys of their emotional well-being to the world outside. That is not freedom. That is slavery in disguise. Because to live in constant reaction is to live in chains. Emotional sovereignty is the opposite of that. It is the quiet, dignified practice of reclaiming your inner space. It does not mean you never feel pain. It means you feel it, and yet you choose your response. You feel the sting, but you do not let it shape your identity. You hear the insult, but you do not become the insult. Like a tree standing firm in the storm, you do not collapse at the first sign of wind. You bend, perhaps, but you return to center. Let me tell you a story. There was a man named Matthew, a teacher in a rough school. Every day he faced disrespect, ridicule, and sometimes even threats. His younger self would have shouted back. But over the years, Matthew learned to breathe before reacting. He taught himself to observe his rising emotions like waves, but not to surf every one. He would tell his students, "I choose not to be dragged by your storm. I anchor myself." And they respected him more for it. You see, calm is not weakness. It is strength dressed in silence. We often confuse emotional outbursts with authenticity, as if yelling proves we are real. But authenticity is not about unleashing your rawest reactions. It is about standing in your truth without needing to prove it. The greatest leaders in history were not those who shouted the loudest, but those who carried the weight of their emotions with grace. Now think about this. How many times have you regretted a reaction that was too fast, too sharp, too emotional? How many nights have you replayed that moment, wishing you had paused, had breathed, had chosen differently? Emotional sovereignty is that pause. It is the breath between trigger and response. It is the muscle that strengthens every time you stop yourself from reacting just for the sake of reacting. But here's the challenge. The world will test you. Social media will bait you. Strangers will provoke you. Friends will misunderstand you. And every time, you will be tempted to prove something. That you are right. That you are strong. That you are not to be messed with. But true strength is not reactive. It is responsive. It listens. It observes. And then it decides. There is a famous saying, "You cannot stop the waves, but you can learn to surf." Emotional sovereignty is learning to surf your own nervous system. It is the daily practice of observing your triggers without becoming your triggers. It is choosing dignity over drama, peace over pride. Let this be your reminder. You were not born to be a puppet pulled by emotional strings. You were born to be the master of your emotional ship. And when you own your reactions, you reclaim your power. Not because the world has changed, but because you have. So the next time someone throws shade, throws blame, throws pain, ask yourself this simple question. Does this deserve my peace? If not, let it pass. Because nothing is worth the cost of your inner calm. Let us now move from the internal world of emotion to the external world of connection, where small acts carry large echoes. In a world obsessed with grand gestures, we often overlook the sacred power of the small. We chase big milestones, big achievements, big relationships, hoping they will fill the void. But what if the secret to connection was not in the monumental, but in the minute? What if it lived in the morning hello to your neighbor, the eye contact with a stranger, the text you send just to say I'm thinking of you? There is a story I once heard about an elderly man who had lived alone for years. Every day he would go to the same coffee shop, order the same black coffee, and sit at the same window seat. The staff knew his name, but they never really talked. Until one day, a new barista greeted him with a smile and asked how his morning was. That moment, that 5-second act of presence, was enough to bring tears to his eyes. He later said, "No one had asked me that in weeks." You see, microconnection is not about being everyone's best friend. It is about being human in a world that has grown mechanical. It is about making others feel seen, not with dramatic effort, but with sincere attention. In the hallway at work, when you nod at your colleague. At the grocery store, when you thank the cashier like they matter. In your home, when you put your phone down to truly listen. These are not small things. They are everything. Research supports this truth. People who engage in small, daily acts of connection report higher life satisfaction than those who isolate, even if they have large friend groups. Connection is not about numbers. It is about nourishment. It is the difference between eating fast food with 10 people and sharing a simple, warm meal with one soul who sees you. But here is what often gets in the way. We wait for the perfect moment. We wait for the birthday, the promotion, the dinner invitation. We wait for depth, not realizing it is built with layers of lightness. We think, I'll text her later. I'll call him next week. And then the time never comes. The moment is gone, and the silence grows. Let me offer you a shift in perspective. Connection is a habit, not an event. It is built through rituals. One message each morning to someone you love. One compliment to a stranger. One extra minute of presence with your child, your partner, your parent. These moments stack. They create warmth, and over time, they become your life. Think of it like a fire. You do not build a roaring blaze all at once. You gather kindling. You add small twigs. You protect the spark. Micro-connection is that spark. Without it, relationships grow cold. With it, they burn steady and bright. Now ask yourself, when was the last time you reached out first? When was the last time you said thank you with intention, not out of habit? When was the last time you made someone feel they truly mattered? Not for what they do, but for who they are? If you cannot remember, do not feel shame. Feel inspired. Because you can start now. It takes less than a minute to warm a soul. And in warming theirs, you warm your own. So today, look up. Reach out. Say the word. Send the message. Smile with your eyes. These are not just gestures. They are acts of remembrance. They remind us that we are never as alone as we think we are. That underneath the noise and the screens and the busyness, we are still human, still longing, still capable of lighting up each other's world. Let this be your invitation to choose the small, the sincere, the subtle, because in the end, it is not the loudest voices or the grandest plans that make us feel connected. It is the quiet gestures of love we give freely and receive without asking. And now, having honored the delicate threads of connection, we turn next to the space within us where stillness takes root, the practice of presence. In a world obsessed with grand gestures, we often overlook the sacred power of the small. We chase big milestones, big achievements, big relationships, hoping they will fill the void. But what if the secret to connection was not in the monumental, but in the minute? What if it lived in the morning hello to your neighbor, the eye contact with a stranger, the text you send just to say, I'm thinking of you? There is a story I once heard about an elderly man who had lived alone for years. Every day, he would go to the same coffee shop, order the same black coffee, and sit at the same window seat. The staff knew his name, but they never really talked. Until one day, a new barista greeted him with a smile and asked how his morning was. That moment, that 5-second act of presence, was enough to bring tears to his eyes. He later said, "No one had asked me that in weeks." You see, micro-connection is not about being everyone's best friend. It is about being human in a world that has grown mechanical. It is about making others feel seen, not with dramatic effort, but with sincere attention. In the hallway at work, when you nod at your colleague. At the grocery store, when you thank the cashier like they matter. In your home, when you put your phone down to truly listen. These are not small things. They are everything. Research supports this truth. People who engage in small, daily acts of connection report higher life satisfaction than those who isolate, even if they have large friend groups. Connection is not about numbers. It is about nourishment. It is the difference between eating fast food with 10 people and sharing a simple, warm meal with one soul who sees you. But here is what often gets in the way. We wait for the perfect moment. We wait for the birthday, the promotion, the dinner invitation. We wait for depth, not realizing it is built with layers of lightness. We think, I'll text her later. I'll call him next week. And then the time never comes. The moment is gone, and the silence grows. Let me offer you a shift in perspective. Connection is a habit, not an event. It is built through rituals. One message each morning to someone you love. One compliment to a stranger. One extra minute of presence with your child, your partner, your parent. These moments stack. They create warmth. And over time, they become your life. Think of it like a fire. You do not build a roaring blaze all at once. You gather kindling. You add small twigs. You protect the spark. Micro-connection is that spark. Without it, relationships grow cold. With it, they burn steady and bright. Now ask yourself, when was the last time you reached out first? When was the last time you said thank you with intention, not out of habit? When was the last time you made someone feel they truly mattered? Not for what they do, but for who they are. If you cannot remember, do not feel shame. Feel inspired. Because you can start now. It takes less than a minute to warm a soul. And in warming theirs, you warm your own. So today, look up, reach out, say the word, send the message, smile with your eyes. These are not just gestures. They are acts of remembrance. They remind us that we are never as alone as we think we are. That underneath the noise and the screens and the busyness, we are still human, still longing, still capable of lighting up each other's world. Let this be your invitation to choose the small, the sincere, the subtle. Because in the end, it is not the loudest voices or the grandest plans that make us feel connected. It is the quiet gestures of love we give freely and receive without asking. And now, having honored the delicate threads of connection, we turn next to the space within us where stillness takes root. The practice of presence. In a world obsessed with grand gestures, we often overlook the sacred power of the small. We chase big milestones, big achievements, big relationships, hoping they will fill the void. But what if the secret to connection was not in the monumental, but in the minute? What if it lived in the morning hello to your neighbor, the eye contact with a stranger, the text you send just to say, I'm thinking of you? There is a story I once heard about an elderly man who had lived alone for years. Every day, he would go to the same coffee shop, order the same black coffee, and sit at the same window seat. The staff knew his name, but they never really talked. Until one day, a new barista greeted him with a smile and asked how his morning was. That moment, that 5-second act of presence, was enough to bring tears to his eyes. He later said, "No one had asked me that in weeks." You see, micro-connection is not about being everyone's best friend. It is about being human in a world that has grown mechanical. It is about making others feel seen, not with dramatic effort, but with sincere attention. In the hallway at work, when you nod at your colleague. At the grocery store, when you thank the cashier like they matter. In your home, when you put your phone down to truly listen. These are not small things. They are everything. Research supports this truth. People who engage in small daily acts of connection report higher life satisfaction than those who isolate, even if they have large friend groups. Connection is not about numbers. It is about nourishment. It is the difference between eating fast food with 10 people and sharing a simple, warm meal with one soul who sees you. But here is what often gets in the way. We wait for the perfect moment. We wait for the birthday, the promotion, the dinner invitation. We wait for depth, not realizing it is built with layers of lightness. We think, I'll text her later, I'll call him next week, and then the time never comes. The moment is gone, and the silence grows. Let me offer you a shift in perspective. Connection is a habit, not an event. It is built through rituals. One message each morning to someone you love. One compliment to a stranger. 1 extra minute of presence with your child, your partner, your parent. These moments stack. They create warmth, and over time, they become your life. Think of it like a fire. You do not build a roaring blaze all at once. You gather kindling. You add small twigs. You protect the spark. Micro-connection is that spark. Without it, relationships grow cold. With it, they burn steady and bright. Now ask yourself, when was the last time you reached out first? When was the last time you said thank you with intention, not out of habit? When was the last time you made someone feel they truly mattered? Not for what they do, but for who they are? If you cannot remember, do not feel shame. Feel inspired, because you can start now. It takes less than a minute to warm a soul, and in warming theirs, you warm your own. So today, look up, reach out, say the word, send the message, smile with your eyes. These are not just gestures, they are acts of remembrance. They remind us that we are never as alone as we think we are. That underneath the noise and the screens and the busyness, we are still human, still longing, still capable of lighting up each other's world. Let this be your invitation to choose the small, the sincere, the subtle, because in the end, it is not the loudest voices or the grandest plans that make us feel connected. It is the quiet gestures of love we give freely and receive without asking. And now, having honored the delicate threads of connection, we turn next to the space within us where stillness takes root, the practice of presence. There will be days when the world feels too loud, too cruel, too demanding. Days when people's words cut deeper than they should. Days when life pulls at you from all directions. On those days, your peace must not be a luxury, it must be your foundation. Protecting your inner peace is not an act of selfishness. It is a declaration of self-respect. Most people guard their homes with alarm systems, their money with banks, their health with doctors. But how many guard their peace with the same conviction? How many defend their inner space from emotional pollution, from energy vampires, from the toxic narratives constantly broadcast around them? The truth is, peace is not something the world grants you when it decides to be kind. It is something you choose over and over again. It is a boundary you draw when someone crosses into your mental space uninvited. It is the courage to say no to chaos and yes to calm. To say no to provocation and yes to clarity. To say no to meaningless noise and yes to meaningful presence. Let me give you an example. Think about how often we allow digital noise to chip away at our serenity. A scroll through social media, a heated argument in the comment section, a news article that fuels our anxiety. These things may seem small, but over time, they erode our center. They keep our nervous system in a state of constant alertness, as if we are running from danger that never arrives. But the damage is real. The stress hormones are real. The emotional fatigue is real. Now imagine choosing differently. Imagine waking up and beginning your day with silence instead of screens. Imagine starting your morning by asking yourself what your soul needs, not what the world wants. Imagine moving through your day with a quiet confidence, unshaken by the moods of others, untouched by the storms outside your window. You do not need to fight every battle. You do not need to explain yourself to everyone. You do not need to fix what was never yours to carry. Sometimes, the most powerful move is to walk away. Not in anger, not in fear, but in deep peace. The kind of peace that whispers, I know who I am. I know what I deserve, and I will not trade my calm for their chaos. There is a line I often return to. It goes like this. Just because someone hands you their pain does not mean you have to accept it. Let that sink in. You are allowed to return what is not yours. You are allowed to stay rooted when others try to shake you. You are allowed to rise above the noise, not to escape reality, but to see it more clearly. So what is the practice here? It is this. Guard your mind the way you would guard your child. Choose carefully what you consume, what you absorb, what you allow into your emotional field. Set limits. Set intentions. Set yourself free. Because peace, once protected, becomes the soil in which your life can bloom. And now, as your roots deepen, you are ready for the next step. If connection is the bridge between souls, then presence is the wood it is built from. Without it, we are ships passing in the night, pretending to be close while being galaxies apart. But when you are truly present with someone, even for 5 minutes, you give them a gift that money cannot buy. You give them the feeling of being seen, of being heard, of mattering. Let me ask you this. When was the last time someone looked you in the eyes without distraction, listened without judgment, responded without trying to fix you? That kind of presence is rare. That kind of listening is sacred. And yet, it is something we all crave. Children, partners, friends, strangers in pain. What we all want, deep down, is to feel like our existence matters to someone. But presence is more than a nice idea. It is a skill, a discipline. It is the courage to put the phone down when someone is speaking. It is the patience to wait for someone to finish their thought without interrupting. It is the humility to listen, not to respond, but to understand. And in doing so, we do not just connect, we heal. There is an old saying, often overlooked in this busy world: be where your feet are. That is presence. When you are with your child, be with your child. When you are having coffee with a friend, be in the conversation, not in your inbox. When someone shares their struggle, resist the urge to jump in with advice. Instead, offer your attention. Offer your stillness. Sometimes that is the most loving thing we can give. Consider this. Neuroscience tells us that the simple act of being seen and heard in a safe space activates the parts of our brain that regulate emotion. In other words, when we are deeply listened to, we feel safer. We become more resilient. Our nervous system calms down. That is how powerful presence is. It changes people's bodies. It changes people's stories. It changes lives. So why do we struggle with it? Because presence requires us to slow down, to get out of our own head, to stop performing and start being. And in a world that rewards speed and noise and multitasking, being fully present feels like a rebellion. But maybe that is what we need. A quiet rebellion of attention. A revolution of listening. Let me offer you a practice. Today, choose one person. Just one. Give them your full attention for 5 minutes. Look into their eyes. Listen like their words are the most important thing in the world. Let them finish. Let silence breathe between your replies. See what happens. You might be surprised by what unfolds when someone feels truly met. Because presence is not just for others. It is a gift to yourself. When you are present, you slow time. You notice the sun on your skin, the laugh of your friend, the sound of your own breath. Presence makes the ordinary sacred. It turns moments into memories. It turns people into miracles. And it begins with a simple choice: to be here, fully here. In a world that tries to pull your attention in 1,000 directions, presence is how you take your power back. It is how you make someone feel loved. It is how you remind yourself that this moment, right now, is enough. There are burdens we carry that no one can see, wounds that do not bleed but ache in the silence of our hearts, words once said in anger, trust once broken, the sting of betrayal, the absence of apology. We walk with these things like invisible chains, hoping time alone will set us free. But time does not heal what we refuse to let go. Forgiveness does. Now, let me be clear. Forgiveness is not about forgetting. It is not about pretending something didn't hurt. It is not about letting others off the hook. It is about setting yourself free from the prison of resentment. Because holding on to anger is like drinking poison and expecting someone else to die. You suffer twice. Once in the pain that was caused, and again every time you replay it. Forgiveness is not weakness. It is not surrender. It is strength. It is saying, I will not let this pain define me. I will not let it build walls around my heart. I will not carry this any longer. Think of someone you have held resentment toward for years. Maybe they never apologized. Maybe they never will. But ask yourself this: how much of your peace, your joy, your energy have you given away to that story? How many moments of your life have been colored by that bitterness? You see, when you choose forgiveness, you do not change the past, but you change the weight of it. You stop dragging it into every relationship, every conversation, every quiet night alone. You give yourself permission to live unburdened. And forgiveness is not only about others. Sometimes the hardest person to forgive is yourself, for the mistakes you made when you didn't know better, for the times you fell short of who you wanted to be. But guilt, too, is a heavy companion. And self-forgiveness is how we begin again. There is a sacred power in whispering to yourself, I did the best I could with what I knew, and now I choose peace. Not because I deserve to forget, but because I deserve to heal. Let me give you a practice. Take a quiet moment. Close your eyes. Bring to mind someone you struggle to forgive. Feel the tension in your chest, your throat, your stomach. Now breathe and say silently, I choose to release this. I choose to be free. I may not feel it now, but I am planting the seed. Because forgiveness is not always a one-time decision. Sometimes it is a daily choice, a practice, a path you walk slowly, but every step forward is a step closer to peace. Forgiveness is not a gift for them. It is a gift for you. So take it, open it, let yourself be light again. In the end, we do not need the whole world to love us. We just need one person who sees us, who stays, who reminds us we are not alone. In a world that chases fame, followers, and applause, the deepest healing comes not from being known by many, but from being known deeply by one. There is something profoundly human about connection. It is not about constant conversation or dramatic gestures. It is about presence, about someone who remembers how you take your coffee, who texts you when they feel your silence, who does not need you to be perfect, only real. Many of us have 1,000 contacts in our phones, but no one we feel safe enough to call at 2 a.m. when the world crashes. That is the paradox of modern life. Surrounded, but starved. Online, but untouched. So let me ask you this. Do you have one person who truly sees you? Not just what you do, but who you are beneath the roles, the smiles, the armor? If you do, cherish them. Water that relationship like a garden, because in that soil, everything good in life can grow. And if you don't, let this be the year you open the door. It starts with small acts, a genuine question, a shared vulnerability, a kind word, because connection isn't found, it is built, one honest moment at a time. Now, you may be thinking, I am too broken to be loved like that. I have too many scars, too much shame. But here is the truth. You are not too much. You are not too late. The right people will not be afraid of your depth. They will swim with you there. They will honor your story, not run from it. Sometimes all it takes is one soul saying, I see you, and I'm not going anywhere. That one moment can break the cycle of self-doubt, loneliness, and fear. Think about this. In the Harvard study on adult development, spanning more than 80 years, the #1 predictor of health, longevity, and happiness was not wealth, fame, or even genetics. It was the quality of close relationships. Not how many, but how meaningful. So if you do one thing this year, let it be this. Invest in one connection that matters. Be that person for someone else. Call instead of texting. Show up when it's inconvenient. Apologize first. Forgive often. Laugh deeply. Because in the end, it is not success that saves us. It is love. Not the romantic kind sold in movies, but the quiet, faithful love of friendship, of family, of chosen kin. You don't need many people. Just one person who brings you home to yourself when you forget who you are. One person who sees your pain and does not flinch. One person who reminds you again and again that you are not walking alone. That, my friend, is a life worth, that is a life well lived.